Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order for the July 27th, 2023 Apple Valley City Council meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone. Just to start us off, the brief announcement for members of the audience who have signed up to speak. When your name is called, please come forward and approach the podium to address the council. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to invite everyone to stand and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The second item on our agenda this evening is to approve the agenda. And Tom, are there any changes?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just one acknowledgement on item 5B on your agenda tonight. This is the item related to the Parks Bond Referendum special election. The council has received many emails on this topic. We have put those together for you so that you have those in front of you. So we should just acknowledge receipt of that additional information.
Perfect, thank you. There are no other changes. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Councilmember Grandal, a second from Councilmember Bergman. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. The next item is our audience participation portion of the meeting. This is for items that are not on our regular agenda. We do have a number of people who have asked to speak about the park and bond referenda item that is on the regular agenda. So if you'd like to speak about that, we'd ask that to wait until we get to that item. Do we have anyone who would like to speak at the audience participation portion this evening?
Is this where we're speaking about issues that you're not talking about tonight?
Yes, this is for items that are not on the agenda. Correct, yes. All right, seeing none, we will close the audience participation portion of the meeting, and we will move on to the consent agenda. These items are considered routine and will be enacted with a single motion unless a council member or citizen wishes to pull an item. Council members, are there any items you would like to pull from consent? All right, and citizens, any items to pull from consent? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Melander and a second from Councilmember Goodwin. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, consent items carry. That moves us on to our regular agenda, which is item 5A, and that's the introduction and oaths of office of Police Sergeants Gregg Neumann and Cory Christianson. And Chief Francis is going to come up and kick us off here.
Come on. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Another exciting night. It feels like Groundhog's Day every time we have a meeting. Come forward and introduce new staff members to you. And unlike previous ones we've done the last couple of months, we have a couple supervisors here we'd like to introduce. So these are folks that have been with us for a while and have somewhat recently moved into new leadership positions. And I will say, just at the patrol sergeant level, these folks and all our patrol sergeants are doing an almost impossible job right now, because they are the ones that kind of take lead on the really difficult and hard calls that really nobody knows what to do. And so I really appreciate these folks here and everybody else from the PD back in the back that's here to support them. But I'll start just briefly introducing them. They'll take their oaths and then have family members come up. And I'll start with Sergeant Gregg Neumann. He's got a bachelor's degree from University of Wisconsin River Falls and got his law enforcement certificate from Minneapolis Community College. He worked with us as a community service officer way back from 2008 to 2009. And if you remember anything about that time of the last couple decades, there was kind of a hiring freeze. There was a real estate market drop-off, and things really slowed down, especially with our hiring, to the point where Apple Valley had not hired a new officer for a year to 2 years. And he had to go elsewhere to get a police officer job, which he went to the city of Mounds View, worked there as a police officer from 2010 to 2012, and then came back in 2012 back to Apple Valley. We opened back up, and he wanted to come back to the friendly side of the metro here with some familiar faces. And so since 2012, he's served as a patrol officer, a field training officer, a firearms instructor, a school resource officer, and a SWAT team leader, and he's been a SWAT team member since 2015. So super active in a lot of different areas of our department. He was promoted to sergeant recently. He's on patrol. And outside of law enforcement, he's a dad, just like many of us, with some active softball players. I know we got some softball players back there. He likes to do woodworking and cabinetry and just keep busy building things. So I'll let him just briefly acknowledge anybody that's with him tonight.
Yeah, so I have my wife Lacey, my 3 daughters, Harper, Cameron, and Ella, and then my parents, John, Peggy.
Excellent. And next we have Sergeant Cory Christianson. Cory has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and biology from Winona State University and law enforcement certificate from Rochester Technical College. He too was a former intern here in Apple Valley, so way back in college. He came up, and I think I actually was your intern coordinator way back in the day. So he came and did an internship in college, went back to college, finished up, and was hired here as an Apple Valley officer in 2014. Since 2014, he served as a police explorer advisor, a field training officer, a use of force instructor. He was a short stint as a school resource officer, and he was a SWAT team member from 2017 to 2023. So again, very active in a lot of different areas of our agency, and well equipped to lead in the patrol division. Outside of law enforcement, he enjoys weightlifting, playing sports such as hockey. I can attest to his ability to fill a net in hockey. We've played a couple of tournaments together, and it's tough to get goals by him. He's also a dad with active family that enjoys sports and going to the lake. And I'll let him explain anyone with him tonight.
So with me tonight, I have my wife Kayla, my daughter Anna, son Cade, my brother Michael, his husband Darren, my mom, my dad Steve. We're kind of all over the place right now. My grandpa and grandpa Bill and Nick.
Oh, nice.
And my mother-in-law and her partner.
Very nice.
We got
Nice. You filled the whole room.
yeah.
With that, I will invite them to meet the city clerk over to take their oath.
Please raise your right hand and read with me the oath of city office.
I, Gregg Neumann,
I, Cory Christianson,
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Minnesota and faithfully discharge the duties of the office of police sergeant of the city of Apple Valley in the county of Dakota and the state of Minnesota to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
You guys want to come over here? I'll invite your family members to come up and pin your badges on.
Oh, look at this. Oh, that's cute. Oh, that's cute. Oh, wow.
She brought a stepladder in. Yeah.
Look at that.
careful with the pin there, honey.
She got it great.
Excellent, thank you. We welcome these folks to our leadership team, and we look forward to them training and mentoring every other new person that we have coming through on a constant basis. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Gentlemen, thank you for stepping up and continuing to lead the department. It's we see a lot of new faces through here. It's also really fun to see the promotions come through. So thank you guys for what you do. I think you might want to let a few people settle out of the room here before we jump into the next one. So we'll just pause for a moment or two and let that happen. Give Eric a chance to get set up and all the good stuff. the next item on our agenda is 5B, which is the Parks Bond Referendum special election discussion. And Eric, I'll just turn it over to you and let you kick us off.
All right, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for taking the time this evening to talk about this topic. Interesting council agenda tonight. We've got parks and pots, so we'll see. We'll take care of parks first. All right, so first we're just going to kind of talk a little bit about the city's mission, which is to, we're pledged to promote and enhance the health, safety, general well-being of our citizens and everyone that comes to visit our city. We have a set of goals and keys to the success for our city, and from a Parks and Recreation perspective, we think we fit in pretty well with all of this. The Parks and Recreation Committee over the last couple of years have been engaging the community to explore if there's interest in a Parks Bond referendum. In their goal, or what they've been trying to accomplish, is to find out what parks and trails we need to update, what type of reinvestments we need to make in our recreation facilities. We've created some new master plans for some of our parks that are on the older side of the spectrum, if you will. And we also want to make sure that we're providing for the protection and enhancement of our natural resources. So really the process started back in 2018 when the committee started talking about this. Then COVID came, and so the committee took a little hiatus, and then they got things going again once COVID wasn't as prevalent. And this is just kind of an outline of some of the different action steps or key moments, if you will, over the last 2 years where things have happened. And I won't read all of this information, but it is available on the website if anyone is interested in taking a closer look at it. So again, the committee's been spending a lot of time trying to get community feedback, and we've tried to do that in a variety of ways. We've hosted public meetings, both virtually and in person. We've utilized our technology to try to get people to engage with us and let us know what they like, what they don't like, what they think we need to do. We've used our website and social media sites to try to make sure that people knew we were talking about these topics. We actually sent postcards to folks that live around Alamagnet, Farquhar, Hayes, and Redwood neighborhoods, because those were parks where we were trying to develop more specific master plans. And what we kind of heard was that residents want to ensure that we have adequate parks and recreation facilities. They want to make sure that those facilities are of a certain quality. They wanted to see us improve some of our maintenance of our parks, and they wanted to make sure that we had a community of a lifetime. You'll recall, and I'll get into it in a little bit more detail here in a little bit, but we did 2 statistically accurate surveys. And in the first survey we did, 85% of those surveyed said that parks were important to the quality of life in Apple Valley. And then 87% of those surveyed said that parks was important to protecting their property values. So this evening we're talking about a series of projects that are supported by the second statistically accurate survey that we took. And the first one is a $2 million investment in the city's trails that are within our existing park system. And so we have about 19 miles of trails within our existing park system, and that $2 million would go to resurface approximately 3/4 of the trails that we have, and then there's some gaps in our system where we would build new trails to make some connections that we have around our community. The second item to highlight is a $2 million investment in natural resources. We have about 300 acres of wooded areas in our park system, and we would work towards reforesting those, creating natural prairies and bee pollinator-friendly areas. And on top of that $2 million investment that we would get through a successful referendum, the city would invest additional dollars to remove invasive species. So the actual investment that the city would make into the protection of our natural resources is actually greater than $2 million, but we would be using about $2 million of a successful referendum towards natural resources. Additionally, to help improve our environment and some of the sustainability goals that we have, certain projects will try to incorporate the use of solar so that we can use solar energy on some of our projects. We'll be replacing some of the HVAC equipment that we have that's been dated, and there's certainly much better technology that we have today so that we can reduce our dependence on electricity and natural gas. We'll be installing LED lighting systems in our buildings and on our fields and in our athletic areas to, again, reduce our dependence on electricity. One of the proposals is to upgrade the refrigeration equipment at Hayes Arena, get rid of the R22 system, put in a more environmentally friendly system, so that's an improvement. We have a lot of old playground equipment that needs to be replaced, and we want to try to do that in an environmentally and socially responsible way. So there's organizations that will take our equipment, they'll repackage it, they'll send it to third world countries and have it be reused there, so it's not going necessarily to a landfill. And then we want to be able to update our aquatic facilities and our splash pads to make sure that we're using the best technology available to reduce our dependence on the groundwater and recycle water as much as we can. The single biggest investment that we would make if the referendum were to pass is about a $16.7 million investment in what I'm referring to as kind of the core of our system. So all of the neighborhood parks that people have that they use on a regular basis. We'll be replacing playgrounds and updating tennis courts and pickleball courts and basketball courts, working on our parking lots and all of the different items that you see listed there on the slide. The next item is roughly an $8 million investment in the existing aquatic center, increasing some of the shade areas, updating the mechanical systems, again, to become a little bit more environmentally friendly, looking at opportunities to potentially introduce solar at this facility to both heat the water and to run some of the electricity, some of the pumps that we have there, and then just refurbishing the slides and everything that we have there that exists today. So nothing really added to the facility other than just preserving the assets so that it's available to the community for the next 20 years. Then another project that we're looking at is a $10 million investment in both the community center and the senior center. The senior population in Apple Valley and in other parts has grown significantly, and so they, to some degree, have outgrown some of the space that they have. So increasing the amount of space that seniors have access to for their coffee lounge and an outdoor terrace, adding some additional program space, a small fitness space for seniors, building an indoor playground so that families, young families, can come to the community center on that cold winter day and come inside from the elements and play on some playground equipment. We're looking at connecting the two buildings so that we just have one facility, if you will, and then there would be some meeting room upgrades with this investment as well. Then at Redwood Park, we're proposing to build an inclusive playground, an interactive splash pad, new outdoor shelter and restrooms, loop trail systems, updating some of the courts that are there and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the community. And then the county's planning on removing the light at Elm as part of a larger improvement to County Road 42, and they're interested in installing a pedestrian underpass in the Redwood Park neighborhood, or in the Redwood Park area, excuse me. And so we would incorporate that into our master planning process. If the referendum were to pass, the underpass isn't paid for by referendum dollars, it's paid for by the county through their County Road 42 project. In this plan, it envisions that the existing pool does not come back or stay or exist in the future. And I'll talk about that here in a slide because I know that's been a very important issue for a lot of members in our community. Then we have an $8.6 million investment in Kelly Park where we would be enlarging the stage in the seating area, building a new playground and updating the splash pad, expanding the restroom facilities, and increasing on-site parking. We have a $5.2 million investment in building a youth baseball softball complex that would be for youth to play baseball and softball. It would include lighting, scoreboards, dugouts. They would have approximately 240-foot fences. This is all to support the needs of both the VAA and the EVAA. And we're proposing that this would be located on School District 196 property, Westview Elementary, right behind the Hayes Community Center. I want to touch on the topic of synthetic turf. It was part of the proposal as we've gone through this process. At this last legislative session, the state legislature passed what's been referred to as a mayor's law, and that law is going to essentially ban PFAS, non-essential PFAS, in products in the state of Minnesota. And so that PFAS is defined as a fluorinated organic chemical containing at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom. I'm not a chemist, but that's what PFAS is. Minnesota is one of 5 states planning to ban non-essential use of PFAS, and PFAS is found in most of, if not all, synthetic turf that's on the market today. And so it doesn't make sense for us to install, it doesn't seem to make sense for us to install synthetic turf, knowing that this is coming down the road. And so unless there was a product on the market that didn't have PFAS in it, likely we would be looking at a natural turf situation as opposed to an artificial turf situation. Then we're looking at about a $3.9 million investment in Hayes Arena, again, to update the mechanical systems that are there. Again, there's R22, that can no longer be produced, and so we need to update that system. That includes replacing the floor and the dasher boards in that system, so that, again, that facility's available for the next 20 to 30 years for the community to access and to use. I mentioned earlier that we've done quite a bit of research and wanted to engage the community. One of the ways in which we've done that is by doing 2 statistically accurate community surveys. We did the first one in March, where we surveyed 400 registered voters within the city spread across the entire community. And the overall, those results supported certain concepts that were found in what we were talking about potentially doing for a referendum. So we boiled down the results of that survey, and we did a second survey in June, just this last June. In that survey, we surveyed 625 registered voters. And in the survey results, in a nutshell, 61% of those surveyed supported or strongly supported a parks referendum. 71% of those surveyed are likely to vote in an election this coming November. 67% of likely voters support or strongly support a parks referendum in an amount of $66,750,000. The average tax impact to a median value home of a little over $350,000 is $19.53 per month. So if we do a little bit of comparisons in the survey, in the 2 different surveys that we did, you see a column there in March and a column in June. How likely are people to vote? The certain and very certain are it was 65% in March, and it's jumped to 71% in June. The quality of life question, we already talked about that, is at 96%. How important are park and rec facilities? 85%. How important is it to the value of their home? 87%. Then we asked, in both surveys, we asked, would you vote for just about anything put on a ballot? In March, 20% said that they would. I'm sorry, against. 20% said they would vote against just about anything that was put on a ballot. In June, it jumped 2 points to 22%. Then we asked, would you vote for some, but maybe not for everything? It was 58%, and it's dropped to 45%. Would you vote for anything? 20% and 28%. So the delta between the vote for just about anything and vote against just about anything is about 6%, and then there's about 45% that are persuadable, depending on what happens. Again, looking at some of the components that are in the proposed referendum, in March, trails was at 80%. It dropped 1 point to 79%, a very strong showing. People feel very important, feel trails are pretty important within the community. Natural resources jumped 5 points between March and June. And I guess I won't go through all the numbers. People can see the numbers there. But generally speaking, there's strong support for everything that you see on the screen. And I'll let people kind of absorb that for just a second. So moving on then, what we're proposing this evening is a 2-part referendum in November. That would have 2 different questions. In question 1, we would be asking voters to consider giving authorization to the City Council to sell up to $66.75 million worth of bonds to, that if it passed, we would accomplish the projects you see in front of us. So it's trails, natural resources, the community center, senior center project, the aquatic center, preservation of our park system assets, Kelly Park Master Plan, Hayes Arena, a youth baseball, softball complex, and Redwood Park. Again, if you'd add that all up at $66.7 million, it would cost $19.53 a month to the median value home within the city. There's a little broader look at the tax impact for homes, depending on where the value of your home is within the city. You can see we've got listed $250,000 market value is $1,324. If you happen to live in a house that's valued at $500,000, it's $2,815. And then the numbers are in between there as well. So again, that's all related to question 1. This is what this is the recommended ballot language for question 1. You'll have that in a resolution in your packet this evening. Again, for $66.7 million, they would be 20-year bonds, and the simple majority of the voters decides the outcome of the election. So if it loses by 1, it loses. If it wins by 1, it wins. It's just a simple majority. As I mentioned earlier, Redwood Pool is we've found that Redwood Pool is a pretty important issue to people within the community. And according to the survey, about 42% of those surveyed would support an additional $6.5 million investment in Redwood Pool on top of the $66 million investment that I just outlined. So we're recommending to the council that there'd be a second question on the November election for residents to consider a $6.5 million investment into a brand new pool for Redwood Park. The tax impact for that, again, is on the screen, and I won't go through the numbers specifically, but I do want to make note that the way the question is set up is that for question 2 to pass, question 1 has to pass. If question 1 were to fail, question 2 cannot pass. That's the way the ballot questions are set up at this point in time. Again, the second question for $6.5 million, 20-year bonds. Again, question 1 must pass for question 2 to pass, and like question 1, it's a simple majority of the votes decides the outcome of that question after question 1, if question 1 passes. So just voting information, if in fact the council elects to move towards a November election, absentee voting would begin on Friday, September 22nd. Direct balloting would begin on October 20th. And voting at the polls would be on Tuesday, November 7th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. It's a regular election. The city has to treat this as a regular election, so all 16 precincts would be open. And there they are on the screen. And I'll get into some more information about how we're going to inform the community about this if in fact this is the direction you want to head. So if in fact this evening the council directs us to hold this special election, we will start to put together a information brochure that will get mailed out to every single mailing address within the city. We hope that mailer would reach people's homes by the end of August or early in September. We want them to have it in their hands prior to them going to the polls, either starting their absentee balloting on September 22nd or the October date. We want people to know what they're voting for or against, and so we want to get that information in people's hands. There'll be information available also on the city's website probably prior to the end of August, but we do want to get something in people's hands so that they can have it and look at it and study it. Like we have along this entire process, we will also hold in-person and virtual meetings so people can come and ask questions, have a better understanding of what the tax impacts are, what the projects are, what it means for them, what it means for their neighbor, et cetera, et cetera. So this list of meetings will be on our website, and people will be able to either participate virtually or come in person, and staff will be there to help answer questions. And so then tonight, simply we're asking the City Council to consider authorizing a special election by setting a date of Tuesday, November 7th, 2023, and then approve all of our standard polling locations, the 16 that you just saw on the screen. You've got the ballot language that's proposed for both question 1 and question 2. That ballot language has been prepared by the city's bond council, reviewed and approved by the city's attorney. And so from a legal perspective, it should be where it needs to be with the language, et cetera. And then if you choose to just direct us to make sure that we put together the neutral information that we would mail to everyone's house, and then we direct us to make sure that we carry out any of the necessary actions it takes in a timely manner to conduct this special election. A lot of that work falls on the city clerk from an election perspective, and then some of that work is going to fall on Parks and Recreation from an information perspective, and obviously our communications staff is helping us get the word out as well. And I can stand for questions. And I know there's people in the audience. There's people in the audience that probably want to address the council about a variety of topics. And I'll turn it over to the mayor to stand and ask questions at this, or answer questions at this point, and be available should you need me for other questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Eric. Very thorough. I know we've seen this before, but thanks for going back through all of it because it's important to get this out there as much as we can. Let's do a couple of things. Let's start with any questions the council might have after that. We can take any comments from the public from there, and then get to the vote if we would like to do that. So, council members, any questions for our Park and Rec Director? Tom Goodwin.
Well, it's really not a question. It's a couple of clarifications. First of all, we got two big issues up here tonight: the park and then the marijuana issue. So I'm sure we don't allow pot in the parks, right?
You'll be deciding that on the next item.
Oh, Christ.
That's not a part of the referendum.
That is
Okay,
5D on our agenda this evening to resolve that one, so.
Okay, but the next thing I'd like to remind people, when this whole process started a number of years ago, our park committee worked very hard on this issue, and they came up with a bond issue of $138 million. Now, we've cut a good share of that out. I mean, the projects that were in there were good projects, but we looked at it as a council, anyway, I looked at it as a council member and said, that's just not doable. So through the questionnaires and working with a firm, questioning people, we got it down to an amount that seems to me like a reasonable amount of money that we can move forward with to keep our parks updated. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to take, we've got, looks like 4 people who would like to speak on this. Happy to do that. I just want to clarify a little bit, make sure we're clear on what we're talking about here tonight, right? This is the 2 questions and moving forward to the election. We have a ton of detail to work out, right? The result of the referendum will decide how much we spend on future planning and getting to those fine details. We're not here tonight to try to resolve all the fine details and where the trails go and what kind of materials we use, right? Those will come along the way. It's also the reason why you saw that long slate of meetings coming up so that we can get more input on that as we move forward.
That is correct.
So just want to be clear on what we're talking about and what we're not intending to try to solve this evening. So,
Correct.
Thank you. With that, let's, take some brief comments. I would just ask people to keep them short this evening just so we can keep things moving along. Again, I've got 4 people who have signed up. Our first one is Kelly Kossel. Kelly, come on up. Thanks for being here again this evening.
Hello, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Kelly Kossel. My husband, me, and my son, 14 years old Noah, live on Everest Avenue. We live by Johnny Cake Ridge West Park. And we chose that neighborhood because of the parks. So I just wanted to make that whatever. I'm very much in favor of hoping to move forward with the Parks and Rec bonding bill tonight. I know we have little issues to work out. I just want to re-emphasize again, my son has autism. He's susceptible to the heat. I know that the Apple Valley Parks and Recreation canceled the puppet shows, and I really want this bonding to go through because I could just envision like picnic shelters, with air conditioning, heat. People could rent them 365 days a year. They could have birthday parties, they could have whatever. And I just think it's really important to just consider all people with disabilities and going above and beyond the ADA standards as far as like the family bathrooms and stuff like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. We have Cynthia Ford. Good evening. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Cindy Ford. I live on Garden View Drive. I've been a member of various councils in this district, 196, for the last 10 years. My specialty is dealing with representation of children, especially children of special needs. The numbers are going up substantially, whether it's autism, Down syndrome, all the different disabilities. And so I think with the park referendum, that it's very important that we do this. And whatever we do, whether we're building a pool or putting in a special needs park, because a lot of people go to Lakeville or they go to Egan. Why are we losing revenue in this community where people have to go somewhere else? Because then what I see as a pattern is that a lot of parents take their kids to the parks, then they go shopping or they do other things, but they're doing it in other communities. And it's important that we keep the money in our district, in our particular city, than to send it somewhere else. And so I think it's very important that whatever we do, we make it inclusive so that kids of my son's age, who's a young adult, he just turned 18, that it's important for that group of kids, as well as any kid with special needs, to be able to enjoy the activities here. This is a beautiful community. I've lived here 17 years. And I think it's very important that we look at this in a different light. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I have my son who's going to speak. He's on the list too.
Absolutely. David, is that correct?
Come on, David.
David, come on up.
Come on. And I may have to read for him because we worked on a statement. All right, kiddo. You ready?
David, thank you.
Heads up. Okay. You want to read? What do you say? Good evening?
Good evening.
Okay, come on. Okay, I'm going to read this for you.
He's excited about it too, right?
Yes, he is.
He is.
So he put down, my name is David Ford. I'm a student that just graduated from Apple Valley High School. I will be attending Transition Plus in the fall, and I also will be voting this year for the first time. So. I'm on the autism spectrum. I love swimming and going to the area parks. I would like parks and pools that are accessible here in Apple Valley, and family bathrooms as well, so that I don't have to go to the ladies' room with my mom, or that she doesn't have to go to the men's room. Because that's not always easy for the kids to do some of these things on their own. Okay, and this is very important, as there are many kids and young adults like myself that have special needs. Thank you.
Thank you. And Cindy, we'll make sure we get your contact information so we can get you connected with Eric, and right, whether you can make these meetings or not, we want to get more of the information from you. So thank you.
Okay,
And you all
thank
live
you.
just around the corner from me, so hopefully we'll see you in the neighborhood.
Yes. Come on. So thank you.
Thank you both. All right, and we have Jason Hill has signed up as well. There's Jason.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'll keep my remarks brief. My name is Jason Hill. I'm the president of Valley Athletic Association. VAA has a decades-long relationship with the city of Apple Valley, and I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to acknowledge the effort that Eric Carlson and Nick Thompson have put in to work with Valley Athletic Association and kind of looking at the plans, getting our input, including going to a number of meetings at 7 o'clock in the morning to accommodate my schedule. So I just want to make sure I get that on the record. Valley Athletic Association is in support of the referendum. One thing that was mentioned earlier was kids going to other places. There's a lot of competition in the world of youth sports, and improving our facilities, including the proposed baseball and softball complex, and just the general improvement in general, will help to keep some of those Apple Valley kids here, and in Valley Athletic Association and in Eastview Athletic Association. So we really do stand in support of that, in support of the referendum, and look forward to continuing our relationship with the city. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for volunteering to lead VAA. That's not a small task, and it's always hard to find people to step up and do it. So thank you. I know it's a part-time job on top of a full-time job on top of evenings and weekends. So much appreciated. So that's all the folks we had signed up. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on the topic before we close comments and move on to the action items? What?
Is this when we speak about the marijuana or just the park?
Right now, we are speaking about the park and bond referendum item, so we will get to the next items on the agenda, and you'll have a chance then. Yep.
Hello,
again.
Honorable Council and Mayor. I represent Safe Redwood Pool, and I just want to say that...
Would you mind just stating your name for the
I'm
record,
sorry.
since I don't have you on the list?
Of
Yes,
course, I
thank
missed that
you.
part. Deanna Larson, and I've been a resident of Apple Valley for 11 years. My kids all use the parks and the facilities here in town, so some of our group are excited about the opportunity to have Redwood Pool on the to be a ballot question. Some of our group is not excited that it's dependent upon the first question. So there's mixed feelings, but we are excited for an opportunity for the citizens of Apple Valley to be able to make a vote and decide for themselves if it's something that they want to fund or not. So I think that gives us an opportunity to see what the residents want, since they'll be the ones paying for it. But we do feel it's a valuable asset to our community, and it's been around for 3 generations now, and we hope that it will last for many more. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else on this issue? On the Park and Rec bond referendum? Wow, that was hard to say this evening. Come on up.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Chad Gregg. I'm a member of the Eastview Hockey Association Board. I don't have a prepared statement, but I just want to come up here and say thank you on behalf of Eastview Hockey. All the efforts to see Hayes Arena included in this project means a lot to us and the hockey community. So I just want to send our thanks to you and Brian for including us in that project, and that's all I got.
Chad, can I just get your last name for the record here?
Krawiec.
How do you spell that one?
Krawiec.
Got it, thank you. Anyone else? Come on forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Charles Hall. I'm a resident of Apple Valley on Reflection Road. Been here for 15 years. I'd like to speak strongly in favor of saving Redwood Pool. I think it's important that we include this in the resolution. Both my children learned to swim at that pool. We've had numerous Cub Scout events at that pool. It's a vital asset to the community, and here we are under an extreme heat warning. 25 counties in the state of Minnesota are at a heat index of over 100 degrees. Having access to a pool is vital for now and for the future, and I hope that you'll support it.
Great,
thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, I think that covers what I saw on this item. We would then look. We have 2 items to take action on this evening. 5B1 is to adopt a resolution calling for a special election on November 7th, 2023 for issuance of a $66,750,000 general obligation bond for park and recreation facilities and a $6,500,000 general obligation bonds, for municipal pool facilities and establishing polling places.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Bergman, a second from Councilmember Melander. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that item carries unanimously. 5B2 is to adopt a resolution approving form of ballot questions for special election.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Goodwin, a second from Councilmember Bergman. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, and that carries unanimously as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for the comments. Thanks for providing feedback along the way. It's what got us here, and it's what will get us right to the right facilities and decisions in the end. So thank you all. Our next item, and those who are here for this item, feel free to stick around, but also feel free to get on with your evening too. We won't be offended. The next item on our agenda is item 5C, which is the higher ground daycare at 14605 Glazier Avenue, and Alex Sharp has this item.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As stated, this is a conditional use permit and site plan building permit authorization for higher ground daycare. We do have two actions before you this evening. Both would be for the approval of the resolution for the conditional use permit and for the site plan building permit authorization for a 755 square foot addition to 14605 Glazier Avenue. For site context, 14605 is a site located on the site plan here. It was split in 2019 to add for Hardeen Daycare. What is remaining of this site is 0.95 acres. Piece of note here. It is zoned limited business, which means that a daycare is considered a conditional use within the district, which is one of the principal actions you would be acting on this evening. The site plan adds a considerable number of playground facilities. So there are actually 3 on the site, 2 sheds, removes 3 parking spaces on the north side and surrounds the site in some fencing that I'll show you later, but it is very similar to the fencing that's on the site to the south for visualization. Additionally, 2 infiltration basins or infiltration areas for stormwater are being proposed on the eastern side of the site. They will take out some existing trees, one of which is healthy, one of which is currently not. However, what this does result in is an improved environmental condition by treating some of the stormwater on site. There will be additional trees required as part of the 755 square foot addition. However, that is based upon the value of that addition, not upon the entire site development. So landscaping improvements on the site will be relatively minimal, but it will take a site that has been unoccupied for a number of years and start to spruce it up. One of the big pieces that I wanted to highlight on the civil plan are those infiltration basins. Because of the disturbance area of the site, these were required to be added through our ordinance. What they really end up doing is, well, a lot of the disturbed area will be in the grassy areas and in the playgrounds. It starts to treat a lot of the parking lot water stormwater before it gets into the street and goes into the storm system. So this is actually a pretty vast improvement for losing one healthy tree. The landscape plan does not show those stormwater infiltration basins yet. When we were working through things, we needed to figure out how big they needed to be, whether they needed to expand more. So a condition of approval is that an updated landscape plan be submitted at the time of building permit, just to amend those two areas, and then also to show which of some of the scrub trees that are going to be removed on the site will be coming down. So we've got buckthorn and a couple of other invasives that it's difficult when you're doing an on-site inspection to determine exactly where the property line is, but they will be evaluated during that building permit process. The interior, the main reason why I'm going to focus on this slide is because of the exterior addition. So it is just this area here that is being added. It is a 755 square foot addition. Elevator is already present. So it's a good reuse of an existing building. If you recall, it used to be an orthodontist office. The addition will not be two-story, so it will only really impact the front visuals of from the street for that minor area. So let me go to, the addition is this area here, which has a bank of windows and then is just adjacent to the front door. The primary entrance will not be adjusted, and while they will attempt to match the brick, aged brick, different areas, it may have some slight different coloration, but the intent there and the materials there are to match the existing building. Additionally, with the fence and trash enclosure, the trash enclosures and fence will be of solid materials. It will not be an opaque fencing. We did ask the question at the public hearing whether that should be opaque with the fence also adjacent to the residential. Residents that were present did not express any concern. The other piece that I do want to note, as there is a condition within your resolution on it, is they did propose 2 sheds for storage on the site. They will need to meet exterior storage provisions that would be similar for the trash enclosure. So we will accept materials that we would for any trash enclosure, which must be similar to the principal materials in the building. With that, the applicant is watching this evening, but was unable to fly in. So they expressed their concern on that, but if we didn't have many concerns as staff, the resolutions are prepared. If council has any questions, I will answer them to the best of my ability for the applicant.
Thanks. Are there questions for Alex? There aren't any questions. We can move on to the votes here. So we have the option, item 5C1, which is to adopt a resolution approving the conditional use permit. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Goodwin, a second from Councilmember Grendel. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And the second item, which is 5C2, is to adopt a resolution approving the site plan and building permit authorization for a 755 square foot addition.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Grendel, a second from Councilmember Belander. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That's approved as well. Good reuse of this site, right? We have some nice improvements, some stormwater cleanup, and we didn't demo an otherwise perfectly good site to do something new, so it feels pretty good to have this back, especially right along Cedar. So, Alex, thanks for your work. Next item is item 5D, which is the cannabis restriction study, and we move on to the second P this evening, right? So, Tom, all yours.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. When we do our goal setting for the year, we identify things we think are going to come on and be for us, and this was not one of them. This was one that was a bit of a surprise as the legislative session went on, but happy to bring you up to date on where we are at. Of course, we did talk about this at our last meeting. So some of this may be repetition, but we have a couple of action items for you tonight. This first item we'll deal with is the cannabis restrictions study. And a little bit of background on that one. The state of Minnesota approved legalization of cannabis, adult use cannabis, during the 2023 legislative session. Governor signed the law into effect May 30th, and Minnesota now becomes the 23rd state to legalize cannabis. The adopted bill is 320 pages in length, and here it is, and there's a lot of material contained within that. It had to address a broad assortment of items related to legalizing cannabis, and that includes cultivation, manufacturing, retail sales, possession, and use. Cities are very limited in imposing restrictions on many aspects of the legalized cannabis law, but there are some local controls that are allowed, and they affect mainly in the area of retail sales and use. Retail sales, that's this agenda item, item 5D, and the second item we'll get to, 5E, will deal more with the use part. But specific to retail, the state will control the issuance of licenses. Cities will not be issuing licenses to businesses, but they're a long way from doing that. There's a lot that has to happen at the state level before they're ready to issue their first license. They need to create the Office of Cannabis Management. They also are creating a Cannabis Management Board, which is made up of 5 members. They are creating a Cannabis Advisory Council, which is made up of 50 members, 50. And when they're all said and done, there will be over a dozen categories of cannabis licenses that will be available and will be issued by the state. This is a graphic that the League of Minnesota Cities has put together that helps to show a little bit of the scope of the regulatory structure and all of the various businesses that need to be addressed. The Cannabis Board shown on the top, the Cannabis Advisory Council off to the right. It's worth noting that the League of Minnesota Cities does get to designate a representative to the Cannabis Advisory Council. The League was very important in the process of this last legislative session and trying to make certain that some local control was retained by cities, so we give them kudos for their work this past session. On the bottom, you can see, 14 different variations of licenses that will be issued by the state. The area that is in the darker border box, those are the areas that the city will actually be able to exercise some control over. The lower potency edible retailers, retailer, a micro and meso business, and a medical cannabis business. So those are the areas that we're principally going to be concerned about. But there's a lot of work to be done, and thankfully the state law allows cities to adopt reasonable restrictions on the time, place, and manner related to the operation of these businesses, provided that such restrictions do not prohibit the establishment or operation of businesses. We have been exempted from being able to say no to cannabis businesses. They will be here subject to the restrictions that we can put in place, but we cannot prohibit them outright. Cities may prohibit the operation of a cannabis business within 1,000 feet of a school and within 500 feet of a daycare. And cities may limit the number of businesses to 1 per 12,500 population. So those are actual provisions in the law that are left to the city to implement, but we need to implement those via ordinance or else they don't apply. So back on July 13th, the council discussed the staff recommendation that we actually go and conduct a formal study to adopt an interim use ordinance that would allow us the adequate time to develop reasonable restrictions as permitted by law. The council directed staff in the city attorney's office to prepare that ordinance, and that has now been done and was publicly posted for the required 10 days. State law also requires that a public hearing be conducted prior to adopting an interim use ordinance, and that public hearing notice was published as required by law. So the key ordinance provisions basically acknowledges the fact that the city needs adequate time to evaluate whether to place restrictions on the establishment of or operations of cannabis businesses. The interim ordinance actually protects our planning process and the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. The interim ordinance would be in effect until January 1st of 2025, or could be sooner if we finish our work and the council wishes to deal with it sooner than that, but the statute actually allows the interim ordinance to be in effect until January 1st, 2025, and that while the ordinance is in effect, no property in the city may be used for the operation of a cannabis business. So the recommendations tonight would be to conduct the public hearing, to adopt the resolution authorizing a study of restrictions on the operation of cannabis businesses, and then also to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 157 of the City Code by adding 157.02 entitled Interim Use Cannabis Restriction Study, and we would recommend the waiving of the second reading on that ordinance. So with that, happy to answer your questions.
Thanks, Tom. Before we open the public hearing, let's see if there are any questions from council and Councilmember Melander.
Yeah, Tom, this is what we're talking about here is regulating sales and how that would be organized. But it doesn't, if somebody has marijuana one way or the other, they can use it effective August 3rd, right?
Yes.
Not in a public place or whatever that.
The law is very clear that even though these businesses are not going to be licensed, are not going to be operational for some time yet, perhaps as maybe the first quarter of 2025, effective August the 1st, it will be legal for adults to possess and to consume cannabis.
So it comes out of thin air, but we can't sell it, right? Or somebody can't sell it, but they can use it.
There have certainly been a lot of comments about this timing of the various elements of this bill, and could they have matched up better, that these businesses should have been established first before the legalization. But the bill was vetted through dozens of committees at the Capitol, and this is the legislation that was approved and passed and signed.
It just seems a little awkward, you know, suddenly you can use it, but you can't buy it, right?
Cannot buy it from a licensed retailer.
Correct.
It will also be legal as of August 1st to grow your own, in essence, 8 plants, 4 of which may be flowering, is actually provided for in the law as a legal activity that you can grow your own.
How's that policed?
I would say difficultly. I think the not knowing where this will happen, probably in a home, the law requires that any type of growing be done in an enclosed space and a locked space, which could or could perhaps not be indoors or outdoors, depending on how that would be. But you're right, the enforcement of being aware of a potential violation and the actual police action it would take to enforce that will be difficult.
Councilmember Goodwin.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 questions. The first one, I'll talk about that one. Well, the first one is the one you just talked about. Growing in an enclosed, whatever, operation of some type. Now, what does that mean? Does enclosed mean all the way around and on top, totally enclosed, or what exactly does that mean? For example, if people want to grow it in their backyard, do they have to have like a greenhouse or something?
The word used in the law is enclosed. There is no mention of the word indoor. So it will be left to interpretation as to what enclosed means. I'm sure there will be people who will say, in my backyard, enclosed by my fence, which is locked, and the other provision in the law is that it not be visible to the public. So could there be a place in your backyard that would then that fit all of those criteria? I'm sure there will be those who say yes.
The problem with that, it's not enclosed in my mind unless it's totally enclosed, meaning the sides, the front, the back, the side, the top.
Right.
So we don't know what that means yet, do we? That's what this marijuana office is going to come out with?
When the Office of Cannabis Management is created, they are supposed to assist in identifying and actually preparing a model ordinance that cities may then wish to adopt. We believe that it's more important that we begin that study now and we start developing that ordinance and not wait for the Office of Cannabis Management. Again, this is about, what's before you tonight is about retail sales. It does not address the other provision of the law that talks about growing it in your own home, growing it in your own backyard. That's not part of the action tonight.
Well, I'm concerned about what enclosed means. The second question I had has to do with the licensing. Now, we have to do a lot of work as a city to prepare for an awful lot of things. But who actually grants the licenses? Now, in this community, Because it's for every 12,500 people, we can have what, three dispensaries?
Four.
4 dispensaries. Okay, we can have 4 dispensaries. Who decides who gets those dispensaries? Does the state decide?
Yes, the state will decide who receives a license to operate a retail
So we're
business.
totally out of that.
Once a person would apply for a license from the state of Minnesota, they will contact the city, and they will want us as a city to determine whether or not they meet our zoning ordinance provisions.
Which is zoning.
So that's the important part of being able to do this study and to bring to you an ordinance that will establish what those restrictions will be. We will have to put into our ordinance, identify where the schools are located, identify where the daycares are located, try to address that from a land use standpoint. So even though the state will issue the license, the city will be asked to, within 30 days of receiving the notice from the state, to reply back to the state saying, does this meet the city's ordinance or does it not? At that point, the license will be valid. The city needs to maintain a registration of all of the places that have been approved, and we have an obligation to go and actually do age verification testing at those locations, however many there may be located in our city. So there are some enforcement provisions that are in the statute that will require the city to do certain things. There's also a revenue component that, based on the revenue that is generated from all of the license fees that get paid into the state, as a proportion of the number of those businesses in your community, you will get a piece of that revenue back. So we have no idea what kind of dollars that will be. We have no idea how many businesses will be eventually established and how that will come back. But there is a revenue component built into the bill.
Well, that's fine, but I just want to make very clear that people understand out there that the state is going to select what companies come in here. It's not the city council of the city of Apple Valley that picks company A, B, or C. So if the state selects somebody from New York or Nevada or California or wherever, that's up to them. And we just have to accept, as a council, because of this law, we must accept 3 or 4 licenses. But the state is in totally charge of whatever company they hire, which is entirely different than the way we usually conduct business in the city of Apple Valley, where we decide who can come in. What a bizarre law. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there other council questions? I think we'll move on to the public hearing, and then we can take up the action items. So we will go ahead and open the public hearing for item 5D. Anyone would like to speak? This is our opportunity. We have one up here, and then Cindy will get to you next. That works? Yep.
So I've missed the first meeting, so I just want, my name is Tammy Johnson,
Yep.
and I live in Apple Valley. This is my family.
Would you mind stating your address for the record, too?
913 Min John Drive, Apple Valley.
Thank you. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, so I missed the first meeting. I just want to understand, we have to have 3 to 4 dispensaries, and there's nothing we can do about it.
That is correct.
So all we can do is say where they're going to be.
Based on zoning, not specifically based on zoning. So it will have to fit in a certain zoning area. And if
Okay,
it's
well-
zoned to fit that, we're not going to be able to say, certain strip mall or those kind of things. It will be based on zoning.
Zoning, you guys decide the zoning or the state?
We have said that that's why we're taking this action tonight, to be able to take the time to put the zoning restrictions together that would be able to make those decisions.
Okay, I just want to say that one of the reasons we moved to Minnesota is because marijuana was illegal. We used to live in California. We used to live in Denver. You can go online and find a survey to support anything that you want, that it doesn't have crime, that it does have crime. All I can tell you is what we personally saw, and it's not just streets paved with golden tax dollars.
Oh, no.
It does bring a lot of trouble and a lot of trash. You can call it medicine, but it's drugs, and drugs ruin lives. I don't think that the kids should have to walk past a dispensary and go to school where they're going to be told not to do drugs. We are going to look like hypocrites, and we're going to lose the respect of our kids. I think as the leaders of Apple Valley, it is your job to protect the citizens of Apple Valley, the most vulnerable citizens of Apple Valley, which in my opinion would be children. I know it's supposed to be only for 21 and older, but if you think the kids aren't going to get their hands on it, the teenagers, that's just wacky, okay? So I think we need to protect the kids that perhaps don't have 2 parents looking out for them, maybe not even one. The foster kids, special needs individuals, recovering addicts that are trying to do the right thing. I really don't think that we need to make it easier for our citizens to do the wrong thing instead of the right thing. I think we should teach our kids that you need to grow up and learn how to handle your emotions and how to handle life, not just to go get high and go get loaded. So I think we need to be very, very careful where we put these 4 dispensaries that we have to have, apparently. I think that we need to push them out as far as we can, hide them as well as we can. I don't think that we need to make drugs readily available. We need to make, the first slide you showed was like, everything that was important to the city of Apple Valley, quality of life, the value of your home. I was coming to ask you guys not to do this. I didn't know that we had to take 4, so I guess I'm asking you to push them as far away from everybody and everything that we possibly can. And I'm here to tell you, I saw, and it's not all great. And if there's anything we can do to fight this, I say, let's have 0. Let's not have 4. If you want your weed, go to the reservation where they're letting them sell it. I don't know, but this is not what our city needs. And this is really bad, you guys. And I think we need to be very, very careful with whatever decisions that we're allowed to make.
Yep, thank you for the comments. I just, a couple pieces on there.
I'd like to respond.
Yep, let me finish and then I'll be happy to. This doesn't have all the pieces in it we would have liked it to have, to say the least. This was happening no matter what we did. What you see here, as much as we don't like it, is a significant improvement to what the original bills were. And I was at the Capitol for this. Our city administrator spent time. We caught legislators in the hallway. We shared things like people inquiring about sign permits before this was here. Just know that this group did all we possibly could to do that. And I'm hoping that you will also reach out to our legislative delegation, who are the ones who passed the law and passed a law without control. The original piece, we would have had no control over where they are as originally written. We would have had no revenue sharing, all the responsibility for age checks, no restriction on the number. That's where this started in the original writing. And so I don't love where it is now, but I also have to look at where it started and give some credit to our, League of Minnesota Cities and the like, the lobbying groups, our collective efforts, and the efforts of some folks in this room to make phone calls, emails, regular contacts, meetings with legislators so they understood in a session where there were an awful lot of bills that we're going to go through, that they understood what was actually in those bills and the impact of them. I don't love it either. It's better than it was, and sometimes we got to take the small wins we can get. But I do encourage you to reach out to the representatives, right? Our representative state senator with your opinions.
What would that accomplish? Isn't that like closing the door after the horse is gone? Like reach out to them to express what?
Here's what I think is going to happen, right? We saw a marijuana-based bill go through a couple years ago, and they needed to go make changes to it. I expect the same thing will happen. There will be changes that will be needed to make, right? And no law is permanent. They have the ability to undo and tweak and adjust, right?
Is there a way we can get it to none?
Not in the current legislation. It would require a change in the legislation. So, but that needs to start with the state legislators, right? And we will also have those conversations, but they need to hear from more than us.
Yeah, I'm stunned.
So,
I'm stunned. I don't think that
Thank you.
Nobody knows what's coming.
Yep. Thank you.
It's ridiculous that there's nobody here.
Yep. Cindy, come on back. You were next, and I think we had some other ones, but I want to grab you next because you were up next, I believe.
Hi there, Cindy Ford, Apple Valley. I'm on Garden View Drive. This is a very slippery slope, and I deal with risk, and this is what I do for a living. I troubleshoot for the last 30 years, and I'm thinking when we say about the parks area of not having this, what does that include? Does that include the parking lots? Because we need to
stay tuned. We're going to get to that next.
Okay,
so,
We can do that.
Yeah, we need to definitely,
Stay tuned.
we don't want this, but if we're gonna have to have it, then we need to put some things in place to say, no, this is the limit, draw the line, and if you are doing it here, lock your ass up. These are kids. We do not want this around the kids.
Stay tuned. We're going to get to that one next.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else who'd like to speak on 5D or for the public hearing? Come on forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Oh, sorry. I'm Candace Hansen. I live with 913 Minchon Drive. I work with a bunch of teenagers, and I've personally seen them come in high to work. And I don't know who decided to make this all legalized and why no one else had a vote in it, but like, if it could just be medical and not like everybody go out there and get it, because teenagers are gonna buy it no matter what, come to work high. I've seen it happen. So I don't know if anyone else wants to think about that, but maybe if we make it medical, so they can have a medical card, like cancer patients, anxiety people.
Unfortunately, that's not within our purview, right? The state law makes any use legal, and I appreciate the comment, but not something we have any ability to regulate, control. It's so. Councilmember Goodwin, you had a response.
Well, yes, I'd just like to firmly back up the mayor's comments. If you think I wanted this craziness in Apple Valley, you're kidding yourself. You're talking to the wrong group of elected officials. The elected officials you have to talk to are your state senator and your state representatives. This thing has got so many problems with it, I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, the whole idea of people smoking marijuana and driving around. I have no idea how our police department's even going to figure out who's intoxicated and not, because it's not part of the law. That's just one of many, many problems. But the League of Minnesota cities, as the mayor said, working with all the cities, did a lot to, I can't say they took all the craziness out, but they took some of it.
It's unbelievable how much worse this was.
Oh, it was terrible. It was just awful. And I'm sorry. I'm just blown away by this whole law.
I'm blown away too, but thank you for what you did.
Yeah.
But you're talking to the wrong body. The legislature did it. We didn't do it.
Okay.
And it's one of the reasons I want to point it out with earlier comment. We don't even pick who it is. So if the state office of whatever, whenever they create it, decides to bring in somebody from Nicaragua, for Christ's sakes, they can do that. They can bring them in from whenever they want. And there's just nothing we can do about it.
Yep.
It's just a horrible law, and it's taken all, well, not all the control, because we have other items to discuss that the mayor will get to, but I agree with you. I can't believe how this happened.
All right, I think we've got all the comments from the public hearing. We'll go ahead and close. Oh, I'm sorry, Kelly, I didn't see you over there.
Mayor and council members, my name is Kelly Kozel. I live on 14414 Everest Avenue. I work in a school kitchen, not in 196th district, but in a different Minnesota school district. My thoughts on this, because I've worked at a high school, is, is it going, and again, this isn't probably you, this is the state, but as a school district employee, is it gonna be a mandated issue if you see a child or a coworker smoking marijuana or, whatever? I don't know if it's gonna be part of mandated reporting or how that's all gonna work, and again, it might be a state issue, but as a kitchen lunch lady, I see a lot, because we come in early morning, we stay late, I guess I'm wondering how that will work, with the police. Like if somebody's doing it, I know that, cigarettes are banned, people still smoke cigarettes in their car, I don't know.
Unfortunately, I don't have answers to any of those questions, right? As much as I wish I did, I don't have answers to any of that.
Well, I just wanted to bring it up about schools.
I appreciate it. I just, like many of this, we just don't know all the answers yet, and so.
We don't know any of the answers.
With that, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on item 5D. We have two action items. The first is to adopt a resolution authorizing the study of restrictions on the operation of cannabis businesses. Motion from Councilmember Grandal, a second from Councilmember Goodwin. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 And opposed? That item carries. The second item here is to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 157 of the City Code, adding Section 157.02 entitled Interim Use cannabis restriction study, and that's also to recommend the waiving of the second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Bergman, a second from Councilmember Grendel. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, that item carries as well. Thank you for that one, and we'll invite Tom back up to talk about item 5E, which is to pass an ordinance amending Chapter 130, which regulates the use within public property and public places.
This is what we can do something.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Once again, we are back on the cannabis topic. This is public use, public property. This topic, I won't go through all of the same background, but the role of cities in this, beginning August the 1st, as was pointed out earlier, the legislation will allow Minnesotans 21 and older to possess and use certain amounts of cannabis and cannabis products. Beginning on August 1st, the city may adopt an ordinance establishing a petty misdemeanor offense for a person who unlawfully uses cannabis flower, cannabis products, lower potency hemp edibles, or hemp-derived consumer products in a public place, and I underline the word other than. So the list I'm going to show you is where the state law actually says you can use cannabis. A private residence, including a person's yard, private property not generally accessible by the public unless the person is explicitly prohibited from consuming cannabis products on the property by the owner of the property, and the premises of an establishment or event licensed to permit on-site consumption. So these three are specifically written into the law as to where cannabis may be consumed. Back on July 13th, the City Council discussed a staff recommendation that we enact cannabis use restrictions on public property and public places. Council directed staff in the City Attorney's Office to prepare that ordinance. The ordinance has been prepared and has been publicly posted for the required 10 days. This does not require a formal public hearing. This is a standard ordinance adoption process with 10 days posted notice. Just to go through a couple of the key provisions in the ordinance before you tonight. One is a definition of what is a public place. So it is defined as property that is generally open to or accessible by the public, except on those premises licensed by the state of Minnesota to permit on-site consumption. So it's very broad as to what constitutes a public place unless the state will tell us something different. And you might remember, I mentioned the slide before that there could be a license issued for, I guess it was this one, premises of an establishment or event licensed to permit on-site consumption. The state will be issuing event licenses at some point that will potentially bring this item into play about what constitutes a public place. But in the meantime, it will be generally very wide open. But we also wanted to define what public property was. This definition is in the ordinance as well. Property, real and personal, that is owned, managed, or controlled by the city, including but not limited to city buildings, all the land thereon, parking lots, parks, golf course, pathways, trails, city rights-of-way consisting of both the traveled portion and the abutting boulevard, sidewalks, and trails, and any city personal properties such as motor vehicles, city equipment, and the like. So those are definitions that have been developed by our city attorney's office to be consistent with what we are able to do under the law. Another key provision, of course, is the prohibition. No person shall use cannabis flower, cannabis products, lower potency hemp edibles, or hemp-derived consumer products within public property or in a public place. That is the action before you tonight. So that would be done through the passing of an ordinance, amending Chapter 130 of the city's code entitled General Offenses by adding Section 153009 regarding cannabis use within public property and public places. And of course, we would recommend the waiving of the second reading on this item as well. I'm going to correct a typo on this slide. It should be by adding Section 13009. The 5 should not be on there. So instead of 153009, it should be 13009.
All right.
Noted. So with that, we would look for a motion to pass the ordinance amending Chapter 130 of the City Code regulating cannabis use within public property and public places, and that does include a recommendation to waive the second reading. we'll do a motion, we'll get a motion in a second, and take any further discussion.
Motion.
Motion from Councilmember Grindall. Do we have a
Second.
second? Second from Councilmember Bergman. I'll open it up for discussion. I wasn't watching, I have no idea who was first, so Tom, why don't you go ahead?
Just devil's advocate again here. You're in your car. It's your car. Can you smoke in your car?
Without the city taking action on that, the law itself says you cannot be smoking cannabis in your car. I will look to our police chief on that as well, that that would be a prohibition that's embedded in the state statute, not one that we need to enact.
Councilmember Grindall?
So obviously the zoo is not our city property, so that's not included, correct?
The definition of a public place would be property that is generally open to or accessible by the public. Because there is a entrance admission fee for the zoo, I don't know if that would fall under the place that is accessible to the public or not. Obviously, the zoo will be able to address and work through the state about, are there going to be licensed permits issued for events at the zoo? Perhaps our city attorney might want to chime in on whether or not a zoo that has an admission requirement is considered a public place.
Go ahead.
If the zoo is within the city,
Speak up.
it is a
I
public.
can't hear a thing.
A little closer to the mic.
I trained the new guy over here, yeah.
Sorry about that. The zoo is within the city. To me, it's going to be considered a public place under the definition we have, even if it's requires general admission to get in, payment of general admission to get in, that pursuant to enforcement of our ordinance, that we can enforce it even at the zoo.
Follow up?
I hope that we will communicate that with the zoo then.
Yep. And there's already no smoking on the zoo grounds, so I can't imagine they want that either, but yes, let's be clear.
No, you can't.
Why didn't know that?
Except it's a state agency,
Yep.
and who knows if
Well,
the
exactly.
state passed this, if they, I don't
Right.
know.
The, so public place, Tom, I'll get you one sec, just clarify public place, then, we have many, many parks in our city where a school district-owned facility, right, is adjacent and feels like part of the park. Public place would cover, you couldn't simply step over the border, say, at Valley Middle into Valley Middle Park into school district property and be okay. Public place would also cover that, correct?
Indeed, yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Goodwin?
I just want to make a statement, this, for the folks in the audience, this is how crazy this is. This is how little control. We can keep it out of our parks. We can keep it out of the parking lot, stuff like that. But our ability as a city only goes so far. And the state is totally taking that away from us.
Yep. All right, we've a motion and a second. I think you recorded those, Pam, did you not? Thank you. All in favor of this, of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, that carries unanimously. Tom, you didn't mention it, but I think also worth mentioning that Minnesota Clean Indoor Air Act also still applies. And so for those, if you could not smoke there, you also will not be able to smoke marijuana there under that act.
That's correct.
So even though those are private buildings in most cases, so. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
It's a terrible law.
Next item on our agenda is staff and council communications. I'll let Tom get back to his seat, and then are there any other staff items we need to cover this evening?
Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, if our police chief, Nick Francis, could come and talk one last time about Night to Unite. It's coming up right around the corner.
Come on up, chief.
Yes, good evening. So next Tuesday, April 1st, is Night to Unite. We put out some information here this week to all of our staff members. We have, I believe, 114 registered parties in Apple Valley. We will be going out visiting them between us and the fire department. So for elected officials and city staff, we're going to meet at 5 o'clock over next door at the Regent Room and go out, make our picks and party hop. And for the general public, we will try to get to every single party we can between us and the fire department. It is a great night, and every year at those events, I always tell people, this is one night to do it, but the idea of that is to encourage folks to get together more than one night a year. It is a really important night for us, and we can get through a lot of places at once. But we are certainly happy when new neighborhoods get together a month, 2 months down the road and say, hey, we didn't have anything together for night to unite, but can you send someone by? We're going to have an event. Absolutely. So this is just kind of a kickoff for us as a police department to just welcome folks to get together as a neighborhood, communicate with each other, exchange numbers with the rest of your neighbors, and get to know law enforcement. And we're really looking forward to getting out on the 1st. We hope the weather's a little cooler than tonight, but we've had, in my 24 years, we've had everything from 110 degrees to probably 40, 50 degrees and rainy. So we're rain or shine, we'll be out there.
And Nick, while I've got you, you also have an event coming up on Wednesday, August 23rd at Johnny Cake Ridge Park West, correct?
Yes, we'll do a first annual picnic in the park, but it's public safety in the park. So between us, the fire department, Alina Medical or ALF Medical will be out there, and it's just an opportunity to get together, have a hot dog, and chat. You've had a couple items tonight that are pretty heavy between the Parks Bond referendum, marijuana, and even on night to night, we're not going to have enough time to sit at every party and discuss every event or every piece of legislation, but we're happy to invite people to the park that night. There'll be a couple canine demonstrations, just a good opportunity for us to kind of chat and relax a little bit at a park and be available for the public.
Thanks. That's Wednesday, August 23rd, 6 to 8 p.m. at Johnny Cake Ridge Park West.
Yes.
At least according to your newsletter.
Yep.
So, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we'll probably have a lot of questions on the cannabis. Think we can have a little cheat sheet maybe?
I think we can take a lot of what Tom provided tonight and boil that down to something that's probably readily available.
Blame us, we can say.
Yep.
I wasn't coming here to blame you guys.
No.
No.
But yep. I think what we also could do, Ruth, is let's make sure we have our reps and senators' contact information to share as well, right? It's easy to tell people to go contact them, but let's make that easy if we want to do that. So.
The legislators' phone numbers on the flyer, so they know where to call.
Well, it's easy enough to find. It just to tell you to go hunt it down yourself is sometimes difficult. So, any other items, Tom? Anything else from council? We'll move on to the calendar of upcoming events. Our next informal city council meeting is Thursday, August 10th at 5:30, and our next regular council meeting is Thursday, August 10th at 7 p.m. Do I have a motion to approve the calendar of upcoming events?
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Goodwin and a second from Councilmember Grindall. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, those both carry. Item 8 on our agenda is to convene into closed session under the National Labor Relations exception to the open meeting law to discuss the AFSCME and LES union negotiations. And do I have a motion to convene in closed session?
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Bergman and a second from Councilmember Goodwin. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It will take us a couple minutes to move across the hall and we will adjourn from over there. So thank you everyone for coming in this evening and sharing your comments. Have a great evening.